I'm saying this especially in 2025, because this is coming 2025, we need all of you to speak up. People are paying for that. When I say I get paid $5,000 a gig, that's not a lie. But you know why I get paid $5,000 a gig? Because if you can't tell from this today, I don't hold back.
Yeah, we see.
Right? If you think you're gonna get paid well, but you're holding back because you're afraid someone's gonna have something to say about it, I promise you everyone will have something to say. I get dozens of comments a day of people being like, racism doesn't exist, sexism doesn't exist, whatever. You're not paying me, so I don't really care what you think.
What's good, Disruptors? Welcome to the first ever live recording of the Dare to Disrupt podcast, where we help overworked, overlooked, and just quite frankly, over-it women redefine work-life balance and move forward in the way that feels most comfortable for them. I am super excited tonight because I am live with a room full of incredible women in Charlotte, North Carolina, with my good friend, one of my favorite financial advisors, Bernadette Joy.
Hi. We're live.
We are live. We are live. So I have to first let y'all know. So I just randomly, when Bernadette's book came out, I was like, oh, girl, congrats on all this stuff you're getting. Would you like to be on the podcast? And she was like, yes. I was like, would you like to do it in person? She was like, yeah, sure. I was like, would you like to do it in a room full of people? And she was like, all right. And so we were trying to get this together in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we were trying to get it together before the holidays.
Yeah.
And then realized maybe we need to wait a little bit. And then all of you wonderful ladies showed up. So I think we made the right decision.
I think we did too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're doing it right before the snow actually comes. So
literally.
Even better. So for those of you who don't know Bernadette Joy, let me tell y'all a little bit about her. So I'm going to try to merge her official stuff, because y'all know people send you their official bio and they get a little antsy when you don't use it.
Not me.
Good to know. So Bernadette is the 8th child in her father's brood of 9. Now that's her word, not mine. She called it a brood. And she's a first-generation Filipino American. And so Bernadette really understands, for those who feel like they've missed out on the money stuff, she really does get it. Now, we're going to get into all of the incredible stuff she's done, like paying off a shit ton of debt in a very short period of time. We're going to talk about how she's taken all that knowledge and used it to help thousands of people transform their own financial lives. And now, girl, you only work 20 hours a week?
I only work 20 hours a week.
We're going to talk about that too. And so, but one of the things that I want to tell you guys about Bernadette is, and everybody here is going to get a copy of the book, but is one, her transparency. And you will definitely see that as you read through this book. She's always been very open about her struggles with money, things that she's learned with money. But one of the things that I will say about working with Bernadette as a financial coach is she's actually one of the most generous financial coaches that I've ever worked with. I have been to events with Bernadette as her guest. I've been to lunch, dinner multiple times with Bernadette, and it is not like this planned, Instagrammable thing. It's literally, hey, I'm at this restaurant. I'll be there at 6 o'clock. If anybody wants to show up, let's all hang out and have dinner. I think probably like the most beautiful thing that I saw you do was your Christmas party a few years ago.
Oh,
where we
yeah.
we were in like this incredible like jewelry studio in South Charlotte. First of all, riding through South Charlotte at Christmas time, it's dark at 6 o'clock. And these houses are really big. And I was like, yo, I don't want to get stopped in this neighborhood because I know I look like I don't belong here. So we were at one of these houses and I'm walking around and you couldn't find it because it's like the studio is behind the mansion. And I'm like walking through this like thing and I'm like, oh, definitely going to jail tonight. But we get there, we get in this beautiful jewelry studio, we do our thing, we have our talk, and then Bernadette's, yo, everybody get a piece of jewelry, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And so you don't see that a lot. A lot of times, especially in the online world, people are just looking to take, and you are very giving. So I'm so excited for everybody in this room to be exposed to you and get to hear from you tonight.
Okay, dang, I'm trying to hold back tears already. We're only 2 minutes into this podcast. Here's what I'll say. I'm actually not that generous, only because I'm generous to people who really have given me life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? So everyone who's invited to lunch and everyone who's invited to that event were people that I said, wow, they have invested in me over the years, and they have been giving of their time. And when I first started this business too, like I genuinely, hear me when I say this, I did not know what I was doing. And so all of those women, her included, gave me grace when I did not know what I was doing back then. So when I finally figured out what I was doing, I was like, I gotta pay it back. So in some regard, I'm glad that it felt generous, but I really felt like in that particular instance, it was my little Oprah moment of, you get a jewelry and you get a jewelry. But really, you've given me tenfold of that. The least I could do is give you a piece of jewelry. That's how I felt.
Yeah. Girl, it was nice jewelry. I still wear it.
Yay!
So let's get into it.
Yes.
So for those of you who listen to the podcast, you'll know anytime I have a guest on the show, I start at the same place because I think it's very important because we really talk about helping women to work and rethink work-life balance, right? We're sitting here talking to the Bernadette Joy who has paid off a ton of debt, book on oprahdaily.com as one of the top 25 personal development books of the year to read.
Top 10, but yes.
Oh! Correct me, okay? You better correct me. Top 10. But take us back to the Bernadette that was $300,000 in debt. And so from a financial standpoint, when was the moment that you realized you needed to work differently?
Yes. I can honestly say it's almost 9 years or maybe 10. It was January 2016. Mm-hmm. So what is that, 10 years? Is it 9 years? Whatever. And I realized I was $300,000 in debt, including mortgage that was normal. I had $72,000 of student loans that, I know people in this room feel this. I was told that if I get enough degrees, people will believe that I am credible and they will pay me appropriately.
Yeah.
So then I spent $120,000 in a master's degree. And so I bankrolled $50K of that myself and still had $72,000 of loans. And not only did I not have a plan for a career, I felt less credible because now I had all this debt.
Yeah.
And I remember very distinctly, AJ and I were having this conversation where I said, I think I really screwed up because I thought this was going to be the silver bullet to my future, and now I feel like it's even worse. Mm-hmm. And she knows AJ. He's very chill. I think you would agree, right? And he was just like, what do you mean? It's fine. It'll be fine. All of our friends have student loans. We're Filipino, so everyone is a nurse or an accountant or one of those things. And I know the nurse manager back there knows. They're Filipinos, right? And he's like, all of our friends have student loans. It's fine. I said, yeah, but all of our friends are really stressed out.
Yeah.
And if this is my future for the next 20 years to keep paying this, I don't want it. Mm-hmm. And so I made a really bold statement to myself at the time. And I said, I'm going to pay off these student loans in 2 years. $72,000 in 2 years. Did I have a plan? No. Did I know how I was going to get there? Absolutely not. But the alternative of paying them off in 20 years or never paying them off was not an option.
Yeah.
What is up, y'all? I am Bernadette Joy, your money mentor and the founder and author of Crush Your Money Goals. And if you are here, it's probably because you are tired of being burned out and stressed out by your money situation, whether it is not having enough savings, not getting paid enough, not having enough in retirement. And so if you are tired of being tired, you're in the right place because I created a new resource guide for you in 2025. It's absolutely free, and you can go in there and find all the 25 different tools and resources. And you can find videos to watch, books to read, podcasts to listen to, articles, and so much more to help you on your money journey so you can stop being so stressed out and enjoy life instead. If you want to learn more, you can go ahead and sign up in the links on this page, and you'll immediately get access to the free guide so that you can start your money journey today. Yeah.
So take us through that a little bit. I guess, what was the hardest part of that? Because I ain't gonna lie, girl, $72,000 is just like, I'd be like, Lord, it's on you. I ain't got it.
I did that for the first couple. I was like praying, please, can someone give me a sign here? But, okay, stereotypically, I was like, okay, one thing I have in my favor is I'm Asian and I'm really good at math. That is not a stereotype, right, for me. And so I said, okay, $72,000 divided by 2 years is $36,000 a year. That's more than what I'm getting paid right now because I'm in grad school. So that's not feasible. $36,000 divided by 12 months is $3,000 a month. That's still a lot of money. $3,000 divided by 4 weeks is about $750. 7 days a week, that's about, give or take, $100 a day. Bernadette, are you smart enough to at least try $100 a day? And that's really how I started to say, okay, $72,000 feels unreasonable, but let's be honest, I could make $100 a day if I just worked at Target.
Yeah.
Right now. So then the question became, to your question of what was the hardest thing, it was getting over my own ego. Because before going to grad school, I was making a 6-figure job. And I hated it. And it caused me to get a kidney stone, kind of hated it, right? I was just like, I'm not going back there, but I can't go work at whatever place. But you know what I did? And I started taking jobs at retail, like here in Charlotte, I was working at retail stores. I was side hustling. Like when you and I first met was like when I was doing my resume business and I was charging people $19 because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was just like, let me just get to $100 a day. But then that $100 started becoming $200 and that $200 started becoming $1,000 a week. And that's how I started building momentum. And where I see a lot of women in particular is that we get stuck on the big thing and we're not good at breaking it down and then saying to ourselves, am I capable of $100 a day?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
But it took my ego to get out of the way.
Yeah. And I know you talked, there was one part you talked about in the book that I do have to ask you about. Like, you talked about, let me find it.
Oh, she has all, for those of you who can't see this on the podcast, she has lots of Post-its.
Listen, this is my Oprah moment, okay? I'm ready. I came prepared. So I do want to talk about this because I know a lot of people, when they hear how much debt you had, feels insurmountable. And even people who have way less than that. It's all relative, right?
Yeah.
But you talked about there was a moment with your therapist where you said the therapist told you that you had a lot of self-esteem, but very little self-worth.
And to repeat, the therapist said I had a lot of self-esteem, but not a lot of self-worth. And my immediate thought was, I hate you. You're wrong, and you're not a good therapist. And literally, I went home later that day and I was like, what is she talking about? And then I really realized, and people have different definitions of what self-esteem and self-worth is, but essentially what she was saying to me was that I had a lot of self-esteem as in I was basing a lot of my worth on external validation, but I had zero capability of telling myself I was good enough.
Yeah.
It was only until someone else would say, you're good enough, you're capable, you're smart, that I'd be like, okay, I'm smart, I can do this. But every day, honestly, and I'm not saying this to be dramatic, but if someone else was saying the things to me that I was saying to myself, it would have been abuse.
Yeah.
If my husband was saying the shit that I was saying to myself, he would be going to jail.
And I wanted you to talk that because I see a lot of that with the women that I'm working with. Like, they do have a very high level of self-esteem, but then they're coming to me telling me they're stuck because they can't do this and they can't do that and they want to change their jobs and and they don't see what's right in front of them. So that self-worth, it's like they're coming to me wanting permission.
That's right.
To pursue their dreams.
That's right. Which is why we pursue all the degrees and, you know, the stats are out there. Black women are the most educated people in this country.
Yeah.
And also one of the most underpaid. So that's a clear example of self-esteem versus self-worth. We're waiting for other people to say, oh, you have the degree, so we'll just pay you appropriately, versus saying, no matter how many degrees I have, I know I can do this job. And that's something that I'm still working on.
Yeah, yeah. So you also give a lot of background. There was a lot of stuff about like young Bernadette that I didn't know in the book. And I thought it was fascinating because it was a lot of things that I could relate to. As a Black woman, I felt like a lot of your background story I could relate to. And you talk a lot about, there's a part in the book where I think you're talking about comparison, but you talk about a lot of first generation not wanting to leave their friends and family behind.
Yeah.
So there's this notion that if I do better with money, I'm going to be othered out of my community.
Yes, there's this, it's roughly translated in Tagalog, in Filipino, where it's just basically crabs in the pot. That analogy of just like, if you get those crabs in the pot and like one crab is trying to get out, the other crabs will pull
girl,
them down.
It's just the crab in a bucket and not a pot.
Ah, okay, so yeah.
Bucket.
Okay, you got the bucket, so we got the pot. Okay, awesome, right? I was talking about this with one of my other Filipino friends of how, and I'm sure you've heard this too, of some version of, oh, she just thinks she's too good now.
She thinks she's better.
And what is very interesting about what I experienced, again, being the 8th of 9 kids, is there's one message that I get as you have to be the best. You have to be the best. If you read my 4th grade report cards, my father He literally, it would be in New York City, you get E's, right, for excellent, and then S, right?
Yeah.
I got all E's except for 2 S's, okay? And both of them were in gym, in physical education, okay? And I was like a scrawny Asian girl or whatever, right? And so my dad on the back of the report card was just like, she will do better. She has asthma, but you know what? She's gonna still do better. he really wrote, but he gave the excuse as to why it wasn't an E, but then said, but it's still not good enough, and she's gonna get an E next time.
Yeah.
So there was that language, but then once you try to do better, then it's also now you're too good. So it's just like, what do you want me to be? And then one day I finally realized, I'm like, why do I keep trying to be what they want me to be?
Yeah.
Why don't I just decide that for myself? Yeah.
And it's funny because I see a lot of that with a lot of my clients, and most of my clients are black women, but we get told you got to work 10 times as hard, you got to be 10 times better. And then you're right, you do work 10 times hard. You are much better than everybody else, but then here comes Bob. And you're like, okay, I report to Bob now.
That's right.
It's really trash. Mm-hmm. And so
I've had 8 Bobs in my lifetime, yeah.
I got a Bob right now, girl. But yeah, so I also wanted to ask you, so let's switch gears a little bit. I want to make sure that we get into some real money stuff, some money tips. So you have a really cool way of talking about budgeting.
Oh, thank you.
That makes it easy for me.
Nice.
I like it. So it's 3 parts. Tell us the 3-part system.
So first thing on top of everything is I don't tell people to track their budgets at all. There's no tracking where everything goes, and everyone's just like all confused about that. So my theory behind it is if you spend most of the energy up front in the intention, how much do you really got to track? So if you know exactly where the money was supposed to go and then you actually do what you said you were going to do, then what do you got to track later? So the way that I teach budgeting is 3 buckets. It's strive, revive, and survive. Okay? And the split between them, if you look at the total amount of money you have in your income coming in on a monthly basis, so it would be 25%, 25%, 50% in that order. So 25% strive, 25% revive, and 50% survive, okay? And the reason I split it up into those buckets is because all of those words are derivatives of the idea of living, right? Survive and revive are derivatives of the word to live. Mm-hmm. And where I saw people screwing up their budgets was that they were doing these like soulless spreadsheets of constantly tracking, and they're not actually asking the intention of how does this help me live my life the way that I want to? And so when I split it up into these 3 buckets, it becomes very simple. The 50% survive is your most basic things, right? So your housing, your utilities, your transportation, your food, I don't care how much DoorDash you eat, right? And your health expenses, okay? And so what that helped me, particularly for women of color, is we have to really figure out, is it truly a spending issue or do you have an income gap? And for the vast majority of my clients, it's an income problem. It's not that they're like spending all this money on dumb shit. It's that their expenses for their basic living expenses is more than 50% of what they actually take home. So if that's the case, I can't cut anymore. Right. There's nothing else for me to cut. So it's not helpful for me to say, you need to cut out all this other stuff. What are you gonna do, cut out your rent? That doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So first we have to double check to say, okay, if you have if more than 50% of your paycheck is going towards your basic living expenses, you have an income issue. And your first thing that we have to figure out is how to make you more money. So that's where I will dive into, instead of more budgeting or whatever, or spending, is we gotta fix your resume, we gotta build your business, we gotta do that stuff. Then if you do have 50% or less on survive, and we're still not feeling like we're making enough money, then we're looking at the other 2 categories, which is strive and revive. Mm-hmm. So strive is anything that grows your net worth. So net worth, as a reminder, is all of your assets minus all of your liabilities. I love that everyone's taking notes right now. This is awesome. Everyone's taking great notes, right? Strive is paying down your debt. That counts as strive. Putting money into savings counts as strive. Putting money into investments counts as strive. Everyone who showed up here today, the expense you paid for this book and this session is strive, because what? You better come out of here with a plan on how to make more money, right? So education is strive. So when you think about it that way and you say, oh, if I have to choose between paying down debt or investing, it's in the same bucket, because either of those things are gonna grow your net worth. Mm-hmm. And then the last bucket of revive, which is the 25%, it's everything that you like to spend money on, i.e. clothing, whoever said that earlier, right? It's things that you like to spend money on that you don't necessarily need, but people find it fascinating that I force my clients to have that bucket and it has to be filled. Because if you don't like your life now, why are you gonna plan for the future? So we have a 25% revive, and Zanika knows this because my revive, like her niece, is going to K-pop concerts all the time, right? So for you, and this is where I get very clear with my clients, there's no judgment on what's a revive. If it's clothing, great. If it's K-pop concerts, great. If it's spending time with your dog, fine. But it can't be nothing because you will not stick to this plan. And that's where I see a lot of people messing up, that they cut too far back, that then they just give up altogether, and then we end up spending too much money on the shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens though when somebody, like, talk a little bit more about the people who like do have an income problem?
Yes. Yes.
Because I think there are a lot of people who feel like there's nothing I can do about that, right? The job pays what it pays, it is what it is, or I'm trying to build this side thing and it's not happening. What happens? So what's your advice when people really need to up their income?
Yes. So one of the habits that I intentionally put into the book is negotiating. And everyone knows the word negotiate, but I have yet to meet, I probably can name people on one hand who are actually good negotiators that I know, okay? And I hate to say it, but as a recruiter, I was a recruiter for 10 years before I was doing what I was doing. Less than a handful of women have ever negotiated me. Because they're like, oh, but they posted the job posting and that was the salary range, or because this is what I'm getting paid now and whatever. And so in the book, I give specific examples of what you can do to negotiate. Yeah. One of them being using a specific number. That's a very simple thing. So instead of saying like 45,000, you actually saying 45,000, $35. In my mind as a recruiter, I'm like, dang, they did their research. I don't know where that number came from, but that number is rooted in something, right? And what I found is that people wait until they have to negotiate.
Yeah.
Versus making it a habit and negotiating every single time. So you don't wait until you're getting promoted to negotiate. You negotiate every year at your performance review, even if you've done the exact same thing every single year. And so for myself, and as a business person, I'll give you a prime example. You're guys gonna get some tea here.
Okay.
Okay?
Spill it.
So, publisher said to me, way back when we started doing the contract for this book, she said, the editor said, you may or may not have an audiobook, but it's unlikely because nobody knows who you are. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Which is fair. Honestly, to be true, they have to put money into this, right? In the back of my mind, I was like, you're gonna want this audiobook, but whatever, we'll let it go. And then, sure enough, a couple of months later, they're like, we wanna do the audiobook. And back then, I asked about what do we do about this clause? And they basically said, oh, we'll worry about it later or whatever. And it basically said that we get first right to pick who does the audiobook because it's not necessarily me.
So they don't let you record your own audiobook?
Potentially not. Because the idea is that not every author is necessarily a great speaker. And then in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, but I'm pretty good, so you'll see, right? And so anyway, we get to the time where they want to do the audiobook, and they literally, and this is another woman, in the email said, since you did not include any sort of performance fee, this audiobook is going to take about 21 hours to record, and you're going to do it for free. Exactly, right? And you get this email, and this is what I realized. How many people really get to write a book? How many women of color get to write a book? How many Filipino women are writing books right now? I know vast majority of people would probably take that deal because the thought is, oh, when the audiobook comes out, then I'll get the royalties or I'll get the exposure, I'll get whatever, right? So, first I was really mad, like fuming. Yeah. And then the next day I wrote an email back, and I have the receipt, so maybe I'll post it one day. And I said, thank you for this opportunity. Respectfully, I know if I'm not the one recording this, then you're gonna be paying someone else to do this. So I want to be paid fairly on what you would have paid anyway. And the feedback from the audience is they want to hear it in my voice. So also, please note that I have a full day job. So for me to take 21 hours out of my day job to do free labor is not an option.
Right.
So please just pay me fairly. And by the way, one of the chapters in the book is about negotiating, and I cannot in good conscience promote a book about negotiating
It's off brand.
if I don't do this myself. 10 minutes, get a response back, we're gonna pay you. P.S., thank you for advocating for yourself and for other women, right? When I tell you, and this is like one of the big things that we have to get over as women, is that we get mad every time someone tries to undercut us.
Yeah.
But honestly, that's just gonna keep happening. Y'all think, oh, because I'm in Oprah Daily that people are gonna start paying me what they think they should pay me. No, if anything, I'm just getting more requests to not pay me. Get over the anger quickly and get to the negotiation, get to the table faster, and come up with the solution. And I gave them a solution. I said, whatever you're gonna pay the other person, you just pay me. So that's where I really have a strong opinion around anyone in this room who's saying, that's how much everyone else gets paid, or that's the cards that I was dealt with. I really implore you to challenge that idea.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So you talked about negotiating, and you lay out a lot of mistakes in the book. But what do you think because I'm looking around this room, I know most of these fabulous women, very ambitious, very smart. What do you think is one or some of the biggest mistakes among very well educated, high level, executive level women that they're making with their money?
Immediately, the first thing, which I'm always surprised and not surprised at the same time, one of the quotes that people often tell me that they stuck in their head that I've said to them is, stop giving out discounts nobody asked for.
Baby, say that.
How many of us did some sort of free labor, discounted our prices? Everyone's looking at me right now. Oh, I wish this was a video podcast where people could see people's faces right now. I'm just like, ooh, okay.
Baby steps.
Right? And I'm not talking about the discounts if it's like a friend that has supported you all these years and there's an exchange value, right? I'm not talking about like putting out discounts to close a deal quickly. I'm talking about the ones that nobody asked for. When you assume that they're not willing to pay, or that they cannot afford you, or that you might as well not even ask because they're probably gonna say no. So I'll just give you another prime example because it's really like in my mind right now. Another female black coach in Charlotte reached out to me and said, I want you to come speak at my event, right? And I said, and she heard me speak at another event. And I do this all the time because I want women to practice negotiating with me. And I said to her, and this is number one, in order to be able to stop giving out discounts nobody asked for, is you have to be quick in responding. So whenever I get a speaking request, I'm able to push out a quote within 24 hours. You know how many people will be like, oh, send me your email, and then let's like have a meeting, and then let's discuss all the, no. Okay, I get the request, here's the event, here's my budget. She said her budget was $500 to $1,500, okay? And I said to her, which is true, I said, my normal speaking fee starts at $5,000. However, because you are a local female coach of color, let me know what you're thinking, and let's figure out how to make this a win situation. And honestly, she could say anything back to me with any sort of effort, and I would have said yes.
Yeah.
I can't really do that, but I can do the $1,500, and then and this is what I usually do for speaking gigs. If anyone wants to do speaking gigs, a lot of times if people truly cannot afford, you can always ask for the testimonial, you can always ask for the video, which is why we always have video, you can ask for the email list, you can ask for referrals to other speaking gigs as a trade-off, right? There's still value to be done. Her response was, I want to respect your worth, and so I'll just not pursue this any further. So how many times have we not even tried to say, I even said it in the email, I said, let's make it a win situation. I didn't say $5,000 or nothing. I said, this is normally what people pay me. You already told me that your budget's not that, so come up with a solution. And this is the other problem that we often have, is that we expect other people to solve our problem, Instead of saying, okay, I can't do $5,000, but I really respect what you do. What do you think if and she could have named 100 things. What if we do a book buy? What if we have you on the podcast? What if I introduce you to, like, there's 100 things you could think of that I would have probably said yes to. So I responded back and I said, so I was like, okay, she's not going to negotiate me, but am I going to deprive the 50 people at her event of my awesomeness? No.
Well, because that's what I was thinking. Like, I was thinking, like, the only thing that comes to mind is her lack of resourcefulness, because you laid it out, hey, we can work together. It really did deprive her, like, her audience of the opportunity to get the knowledge that she wanted you to impart on them. So I would at least come back with, girl, I don't know, let's talk about something, you know?
Yeah. But that's more often what I see than not.
Yeah.
Because we think, oh, she asked for this, and so I'm going to respect her worth, and so I'm just going to shut the whole deal down. Versus saying, you know what, I am also worthy, and I also have something to offer to her, so let's figure out how to trade.
Yeah.
So that's where I said, stop giving out discounts nobody asked for. The ultimate discount that she did was she now deprived her audience of a $5,000 speaker who would have been willing to come to serve.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that to all of us lovingly, because it's still a hard thing for me to get over, is when I say stop giving out discounts nobody asked for, Filipinos, we love discounts. So I'm so used to everybody around me being like, oh, but can I get that cheaper? Can I get a discount or whatever? So I have to practice every day to say, I'm going to charge full price, but I'm willing to negotiate.
Yeah. Would you say that's a good way to say that to somebody? Because, like, if it's your people, I have a hard time being like, girl, it's 5,000, period. Is that a good way you would say, hey, here's where I'm at. I do this professionally. This is where I'm at. But I would be willing to have a conversation about something else. Okay.
Yeah, it's easy for me saying that because I do, in fact, get paid $5,000. What I see a lot of people doing is saying, oh, I get paid $5,000, but they've never gotten paid $5,000 before. And there actually has to be some track record, right? So when I say, and this is the other kind of gripe I have, like in the women's empowerment space right now, is charge your worth, but you still have to prove that you can provide results. So it's just, oh, they should know who I am. Actually, no, vast majority of people have never met me before. So that's why I know it's obnoxious, but I have to sometimes say, oh yeah, I was in Oprah's thing before. And they're like, oh shit, okay. You don't have to be in Oprah to charge $5,000. I was charging that before that happened, but I showed people, hey, I have this many people who have gotten results. I have taught this many classes, whatever it is that you need to do, and it needs to be visible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bet the price going up though now that you are in Oprah. So I got one more question, and then I do want to get to some questions in the room. So I feel like 2025 for Black women has been deemed like the year of don't come to us about nothing, okay? We are checked the F out. We did our parts, we've carried the torch, and we are done. We're good. We are checked out for 2025. I've seen the memes like everywhere. Everybody calling God to make sure they're not on the strongest warrior list and everything. But I wanted to ask you, how do you think financial independence can be a tool for rest and joy and not just for security?
Okay, I have to address that previous comment before because I feel that one really hard in the sense of, so I worked on the Kamala campaign this year. I was brought in as one of the creators for North Carolina because it's a swing state here, and so they're pulling people in to say, come to these events and promote and educate people on what's going on. And so I got to go to the rallies, like in the press box, and interview people. And I am not at all in politics, right? But I knew I was going to try my very hardest, right? And so when I say that, and AJ actually was like a really good supporter on this, we made a conscious decision, and this was controversial, right? In the personal finance space, there's been a lot of people called out right now as to who, like during election time, as to whether or not they were being very clear about where they stood. And in my mind, and I get a lot of comments here from people like, well, why are you talking about politics? Because you're a personal finance firm. I'm like, taxes, childcare, housing, like those are all things that my audience has to manage. And so I need to know what the narrative is and what might possibly happen down the road. And then take that aside, it's just like, this is just the right candidate. She's qualified, period, right? And going into your conversation of just like, you know what, I'm actually really glad that narrative is happening right now. I'm like, you know what, don't come to us right now because we're working on ourselves and we're gonna take care of ourselves and y'all ask for that, so you go deal with that, right? So that's great. So that is a segue into your question of how do you use money as a tool for joy.
Yeah.
Is, for me, I was able to step into this type of role. Honestly, I would not have been able to take time out of my day to drive to Raleigh, to go to different events and stuff, if I wasn't a debt-free millionaire working 20 hours a week. Truthfully, I would have to say no to a lot of things, so I was going to a day job.
Yeah.
So part of my joy was that I actually got to use the time that I had to be able to do something that really mattered to me. Now, that aside, and this is the narrative that I'm really trying to work hard on with my clients, again, especially my Black and brown clients, is there is consistently this narrative of, okay, your joy will come from serving everyone else around you.
Yeah. Yeah, facts.
I promise you, it is so much more joyful when you use that money yourself. Okay? And that comes back to the 25% budget category in Revive. I really encourage, especially my clients who have spent their whole lives supporting their husbands, supporting their kids, supporting their parents on these really difficult things, to say, you know what? You take 1 year to actually find out who you are and what you actually really enjoy doing and spend money on it and then put it on your calendar. Those are the two things I always have my clients do. You have to spend money and you have to put it on the calendar. If you say you're gonna go, fun fact, today I did my first swim lesson because I don't know how to swim. Yay, right? Yes. This is embarrassing, but I started crying during the swim lesson this morning because, y'all are the first to hear this, because it was the first time I ever floated on my back. Like, I never did that before.
That's awesome.
Thank you. I'm getting a little teary about it because I thought I was going to drown, to be honest. So I went there, and this is the first time I floated on my back. And the swim lessons, by the way, shout out to Eastway Rec Center. It is an awesome facility. And my swim lessons are only $70 for 8 weeks. But the hard part wasn't the money. It's going to swim lessons at 11:15 on a Thursday morning.
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
Most people cannot just go to swim lessons at 11:15 on a Thursday morning. So when I say, yes, you want to use money as a tool for joy, the actual really harder part is making the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And more Black women specifically need to take back their calendars and stop letting people put shit on their calendar that they don't really want to be at, and taking meetings that could have been an email, and go do something joyful instead.
See, thank you, because when I say it to them, they be looking at me crazy. And when I be like, why is this on your calendar? What is all this stuff?
I think because I'm very candid, like when you were in Crush Club, and I show this to my Crush Club, like I show people my calendar, like people really don't believe me when I say I work 20 hours a week. If I'm being truly honest, this season right now is a little bit busier just because of the book specifically. But normally I work Monday through Wednesday from 10 to 4, and then I might do some admin on Thursdays, but I'm usually off entirely on Thursdays and Fridays.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm able to do that is because even though I only work 20 hours, it is a very intense 20 hours, and I don't fuck around. Like, I don't stand around the proverbial water cooler and just whatever. I do my work for 20 hours, and then when I'm not at work, then I'm fully present where I am. Like, obviously swimming lessons, you can't do anything else but be in the pool.
Yeah.
So when I say use your time wisely, but you might need to use some money and spend some money in order to free up that time.
Yeah.
So you might be thinking, oh, I need to spend money on these clothes or whatever to find joy. What if you spent that money on someone, like the common example is like someone deep cleaning your house once a quarter or whatever, and you use that time instead to go hang out with your girlfriends?
Yeah.
Really use the money to buy time.
I like that.
Thanks.
Use the money to buy time. Okay, so I want to get into some questions. We got a lot of incredible people here. I know they were taking notes. I have to tell you this. So somebody reached out to me. I won't call them out. They reached out to me yesterday. And this is how I knew. I had been praying. I was like, Lord, please send the right people to this event. And I got a text message yesterday from somebody that said, excuse me, I would like to know what is the seating arrangement for tomorrow, because I would like to bring the right equipment to take optimal notes, for optimal note taking. And I was like, thank you, Lord. I already know the right people are coming.
I think she just called herself out right now, but
I wasn't gonna call her out, but I was just like, of all the things that I thought people were gonna ask me, I didn't know people was like, yo, I need to be prepared for note taking. You okay?
I love that. I'm gonna give a little challenge though, because this is what I know, because again, most educated women in the nation hella good at taking notes,
Yes.
not as good as implementing afterwards.
Yes. So did you know after this they get 2 accountability calls with me? So there's accountability call in February and accountability call in March for everybody who attends this event to keep everybody on track.
Oh, you guys are in trouble.
All right, so what questions do you guys have? And just so everyone knows, just ask your question loud enough and I'm going to repeat it here so we can have it for the sake of the recording. What questions do we have?
And this is your chance, remember, this is not to toot my own horn, this is to say, you have an opportunity to ask a debt-free, soon-to-be multimillionaire woman who runs a business, who is an investor, who has $1 million in retirement. If you don't got any questions,
I know you got questions. You can't be here if you don't have questions. Okay, I'm gonna start from the front and work my way back. So we'll start with.
Okay, so if someone that has never invested before, what would you think would be the best steps to start investing?
Let me repeat that. So for someone who has never invested before, what would be some of the steps that you would suggest they take? First few steps that they take towards investing.
okay. So self-serving, I am teaching a class later this month on investing. So if you want to come to that investing class, it's called Investing for Beginners. But first steps, this is where I see a lot of people, and this is what's making me really frustrated. Communities of color are being targeted for all of these like shitty investment kind of things, like crypto, for example, of like people are buying crypto when they don't have enough money to get to their next paycheck. Okay? So first thing is fundamentals. If you've never invested before, then I need to question, first of all, do you have at least 1 month's worth of money sitting in a checking account right now so that you can stop the paycheck to paycheck mentality? Most people talk about emergency fund, right? But I'm talking about what I call in the book cash flow cushion. I have all my clients have 1 month's worth of those 5 expenses I talked about earlier in Survive sitting in your checking account so that you're not waiting for your next paycheck to make decisions. And especially again with communities of color, we're so used to the paycheck to paycheck mentality. We gotta wait for our next paycheck to make any choices. You know what investors don't have a problem with? If you're a really good investor, you have money set aside already for when the opportunity comes. Because we can't control when the opportunity shows up. But you can control if you're ready. And in order to be ready, you can't be waiting for your next paycheck. And a lot of people say, we can just invest $5, $10. No, if you can't afford your basic bills right now, you cannot be investing, okay? Number 2 is you cannot have any consumer debt, particularly credit cards. I check all my clients. This is my personal opinion. Everyone has different thoughts on it, right? But I don't have anything against credit cards, but you have to be paying them off weekly, not just monthly. And I say that to my clients because what I figured out with a lot of my clients is that they think that they're actually ahead on their credit cards, but they're actually behind. Because if you think about when you pay your credit card statement, when was that money actually spent? Up to 30 days ago, right? So if you're paying your credit card weekly, then you really have a true sense of what actually money you have to afford, okay? Then the third step is, I always tell people to have 1 month's worth of savings in a high yield savings account. I love my credit union. They have they have great options for like different high yield savings accounts. And specifically, I say 1 month because a lot of personal finance folks say 3 to 6 months. But if you make $5,000 a month, that could be $15,000 or it could be $30,000. That's a big difference. So I work most people towards having 1 month's worth of savings first before you even think about investing. Then if you decide you want to go into investing, that was a really long answer. Now, assuming you've done all these things, you don't need to have a brokerage account, you don't need Acorns, you don't need any of this stuff. If you have a employer-sponsored account, so a 403B or 401k, that is all you need to be doing right now. You don't need to be making this complicated because most people are busy professionals. You ain't got time to be reading every stock news. And then if you don't have access to that, then you're going into an IRA, individual retirement account. And in both those cases, minimally, at least what you're doing is saving the taxes that you would have paid on that money. And I can't tell you how many women specifically I see are opening up these brokerage accounts and they haven't maxed out these other accounts. And so what I explain to them is imagine you're like every investment account, it's in my book too, where it's like a luxury bag. Why do you need to carry 3 Louis Vuitton purses?
At the same time.
At the same time. Just have the one purse and fill it up. But if you're putting money into a brokerage account when the other bag is still not full, then you basically have a bag that has a hole at the bottom. And the hole at the bottom is taxes.
So buy a Louis Vuitton bag.
So the answer is buy a Louis Vuitton bag because they're a great investment.
Just one.
But just one.
Just one. It's full. They were full by second.
That's
But they're
good.
called never full, so they're never full.
So quick question. Are you in the stop 401k contributions while you pay off consumer debt camp, or are you a keep it going?
I am. And everybody hates me for that. But I wrote an article about this in Forbes and in other places where the reason that my husband and I were able to pay down debt so quickly is because we stopped trying to do too many things at the same time. Because how many of us are like, oh, you know what? I got to save money, and I got to pay down debt, and I got to put money in my 401k, and I got to pay off this car, and I got to get a raise, and I got to send the kids to college. You can't do all those things at the same time. You are surefire to fail. So my philosophy around debt is that debt should be a short-term solution. It should never be a long-term lifestyle. So my husband and I, we paid a massive amount of debt, $300,000 debt in 3 years, but we have been debt-free ever since.
Yeah.
So if you think about all the money that used to go towards credit cards and to car loans and to my student loans, now all that money is going to investing because I got nowhere else to put it. So now my husband and I, every year since 2020, have been maxing out our 401ks, which this year is at $23,500 each. Maxing out our IRAs, which is at $7,000 this year. So between the two of us, we're putting more than $50K a year. But that's because what else are we going to do with the money if we don't have any car loan, we don't have any student loans anymore, we don't have any credit card debt? Right, so I'm in a big camp of, and I got into a fight about this with a financial advisor, because of course, and this is the other thing you need to consider, I'm not saying that financial advisors are bad, right? But most of these places work for some sort of entity, right? Of course, the bank is gonna tell you, just pay a little bit off on your credit card and also put money in your investment account. Because why? They get money on both sides.
Right.
So my thought is, when people ask me what is the best way for me to make passive income, stop being everyone else's passive income first. Y'all want to tell me you want to learn how to invest? You just gave 23% away on your credit card interest rate. As a beginner investor, you're not going to find a 23% deal on any investment, I promise you.
Yeah.
So if you can't tell, I'm really passionate about this. Now, it's not to say that if you're doing both things, it's not that you're wrong, but then you have to be okay with the fact that your timeline is going to be really slow.
So the question is coming from someone who is working full-time, husband, 2 small children. They both have some type of side hustle. However, with all of the other things that they got going on, they have serious time constraints. So the question is related to what we just talked about with passive income. What would be some examples of types of passive income, or how can they leverage the skills that they already have to increase their income with the limited time that they have? Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm just going, there's no side hustles that I think work for everyone, so I'll just tell you the ones that I've done in the past. So for me, when you think about side hustle or you think passive income, most people are thinking top line revenue versus net income. So the first thing, sounds very self-serving, goes back to your budget, is unless you can tell me with absolute certainty that you know where every dollar has gone every single month, don't be looking for passive income right now. Go get the dollars that you already earned. Okay? So when I say, oh, putting money into your IRA does not seem sexy, or putting into your 401k doesn't feel like it's sexy, that's already passive income because you've just saved potentially probably thousands of dollars on taxes with one choice. So for a small example, my husband and I, our New Year's tradition is on January 1st, we put our full contribution for our IRA on January 1st, because between the two of us, it's $14,000 that is not getting taxed. So think about that. Did I have to do any work other than just press a button to save taxes on $14,000 that's being taxed at a high income level right now? Investing would be one of them, but specifically into retirement accounts so that you can save the money on taxes. Number 2 is going back to the high yield savings account. I'm still frustrated. I see so many people who are carrying savings accounts that have 0.001%. Like, just don't do that. Just get a high yield savings account. Right now, they're doing about 3.5% for no work. For no work. Then there's also money market accounts, which is if you ever look at your investment accounts and it says, oh, it's in cash, it's technically not in cash. It's sitting usually in something like a money market account where it is earning a bit of interest, and it's usually a little bit higher than the high yield savings accounts. So you can put in a money market account. Other things that I've looked at, and this is like a little bit more nuanced, but things like treasury bills and things, bonds basically where they're almost no risk because they're not going to default, and looking at those as passive income. Those are not anything fun, right? Those are like 3.5, 4%. You're like, but taxes, that's a decent amount, right? Now we're talking about things with your active skill sets. I wrote an article that got a lot of hits on, I wrote 2 articles that actually got a lot of hits on Forbes. One is stop letting people pick your brain. So everyone in this room, I'm gonna guess there's something that people know to go to you for. It could be like, it doesn't even have to be anything like, for me, it was resumes, right? That's an obvious one where like I could charge for that. But if you're like, I had a client who was just really good at maintaining fish tanks for some reason, right? Fish tanks, like he would just he just knew like the right temp, he was just obsessed with fish tanks. So if you ever wanted to build a fish tank with like tropical fish, like Nemo, like tropical fish, like he knew how to build a good fish tank. And so for him, it wasn't passive per se, but it didn't feel like work for him, right? So this is the thing that is so counterintuitive, again, as women specifically, is we think that the thing that we do really well and we would do for free because we love it so much, we shouldn't charge for that. That's exactly the thing you should be charging for. Mm-hmm. I wrote an article that said, here are 7 things, here's step by step on how you turn those pick your brain meetings into a business.
Can you give us one?
One of them is to always have a contract ready on hand. And anyone in this room, if you want that template, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you, right? The second side hustle that has been the most fruitful for me is speaking. The hard part about speaking is finding the topics that you are going to be in the top 10% about. That's the hard part. So there's a lot of motivational speakers. Everybody got a podcast who's, I'm super motivational and awesome and you should follow me. But if you are someone who has a podcast, like this is a perfect example. This is a podcast for, I love your tagline, right?
Mm-hmm. Overworked.
Overworked. I just remember the over it part.
Overlooked. And over it.
Right? That's a very specific niche. I have no doubt, knowing her for as long as I've known her, that she can actually get herself to be in the top 10% for this audience. But what everyone's trying to do when they're doing public speaking is they're trying to be for everybody. And I'm saying this, especially in 2025, because this is coming 2025, we need all of you to speak up. People are paying for that. When I say I get paid $5,000 a gig, that's not a lie. But you know why I get paid $5,000 a gig? Because if you can't tell from this today, I don't hold back.
Yeah, we see.
Right? So if you think you're going to get paid well, but you're holding back because you're afraid someone's has something to say about it, I promise you everyone will have something to say. I get dozens of comments a day of people being like, racism doesn't exist, sexism doesn't exist, whatever. You're not paying me, so I don't really care what you think, right? And so I also have written some content and I teach classes on how to get speaking as a side hustle, and I always start people off of getting paid $500 a gig.
Listen, I take the 500 right now. Like
That's right. That's right.
Gotta get this debt down.
That's right. That's how I started, though. I started out doing speaking gigs for free, and then I started doing them for $250, and then I didn't start charging $5,000 right out the gate. I had to build that, but $500, what I found is a sweet spot of where the other person is serious about you and is not going to try to play you. Right now, okay, more spill the tea here. I love that we're here in person. I'll be honest, right? So I got burned out from speaking in Charlotte because there's too many people who are like, oh, we see you in all these things, so can you come to our event? And we don't want to pay you, but we're going to charge all this money. And it's different if it's like, again, someone I know who, and whatever. These are like random people I've never met before. I said earlier, this is what I normally get paid, but if it is a particular audience that I know is my audience, I'm willing to take a lesser fee on that because I know I can really help them and because these are my people, right? And what I found is, even right now, like literally, I was complaining about this to AJ, is just people are like, oh, we want you to do all this. The ones who don't want to pay are the ones who always ask for the most work.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like not just speaking.
Yeah. She and I, we didn't even have much conversation. She was like, do you want to do this? Yes. Do you want to do, yeah. What time? This, and then we're done. But I have someone right now who's just literally has gone back and forth on this gig has multiple phone calls, all this other stuff. And the only reason I gave some effort to it is because it's a mutual, a friend of a friend or whatever. But finally today I was telling AJ, I'm like, I'm just gonna pass on this gig because it's already a pain in the ass and it's in April. Like, I don't wanna deal with this anymore. It's not worth it. There's 350 people showing up to this event, and I was just like, but if you're gonna run it like this, I'm not confident that this is actually gonna be good for my reputation. It's $500 is where I figured out if people don't have a budget, or you want to just get your foot in the door, that's where you start seeing there's a good balance between you're serving and you're getting practice, but the person on the other side isn't going to be unprofessional.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, more questions. Okay, yeah, let's do one at a time. This is a great one for you. So the question is it better to pay the mortgage off early or just ride that 30-year term out?
The traditional personal finance answer is like, it depends. I don't know what everyone's situation is. In my case in particular, the $300,000 in debt included a mortgage. So I made the conscious decision to pay off my mortgage early. So at 34, I was debt-free, including my paid-off house in South Charlotte area. All right. What that did for me was, what I said earlier is now I don't have this mortgage payment. I'm putting all this money towards other stuff. What was crazy is that my husband and I, we decided to not only, and since then we bought 3 properties and we paid them all off. Okay, so first thing we did, and this is different now, back in the day we had the benefit of having like lower interest rates, but I was able to get a 15-year or a 10-year mortgage instead of a 30-year mortgage, and that helped me pay off a little bit faster. But for me, the reason that I decided to pay off the home was because my mom and my dad, even though they worked really hard, in their retirement, they could not afford our mortgage in New York City anymore. And I found out after the fact, because this is how deep-rooted the shame was, my mom started cleaning houses and never told me and my brother, because they were afraid that they couldn't pay the mortgage anymore. So I still have this deep-rooted trauma of, I gotta make sure there's a roof over my head.
Yeah.
Like literally. And for me, that was the right choice for me. But what was crazy was that my husband and I decided after we paid off all of these properties to sell all of them, and now we're renting. So think about that. $1.9 million net worth, no debt, and I am renting in NODA. Traditional personal finance would say, you're a loser, you don't even own a house, you don't have a corporate job, like you don't have a big title, you don't got kids, like literally all of the markers of a successful woman.
Yeah.
But then when I tell people I make enough money in my dividends and my passive income to pay for my rent, they ain't got nothing to say about that. So the short answer to your question is I really feel like there's not a lot of downside in paying off more towards your mortgage, because worst case scenario, you can always pull it out later on in a home equity loan if you absolutely had to. But what I found for a lot of my clients, I had a client this year who did pay off her house, and then she finally started seeing the amount changing in her budget every month, and she finally decided to pull the trigger and retire.
Wow.
A paid off home is always really great. And if you ever, this is the beauty about debt, y'all. If you ever miss being in debt so much, you can always go back.
Did your other question come to you?
Yes. You can invest your money for last year anytime or up until a certain point, right?
You're talking about for the IRA?
Yes.
Up until you file your taxes.
Okay, you can put it in for last year.
If you didn't put anything in for last year or you didn't do the full amount, you can still do it now up until when you file your taxes.
Make sure we get this one recorded. So the question is, if you have multiple credit card debt, do you suggest consolidating all of those into one thing?
Yes. And to clarify the previous question, it was when can you put money in your IRA for this year?
Yes,
okay. I actually am not a huge fan of debt consolidation, only because so many of my clients who came to me with debt, it was because they consolidated and then they still kept doing the same behavior, and now they have a personal loan and they still have credit card debt. That's happened way too often. I have a client right now who is awesome, successful. Like when you talk about Black excellence, like gonna be rich.
I'm like, so are we in this room.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But has somehow have 15 different credit cards. 15, right? And so The homework assignment that he has gotten is you gotta get rid of it. I'm not even telling you get rid of all of them. I'm like, just get rid of 5 right now. We'll deal with the other 10 later. And the conversation I had with him was, because I'm working on a business with him, is imagine all that time you spent in the last 2 years trying to pay off these credit cards. We could have been working on your business instead. So what I found with debt consolidation, to your question, is we have to get at the root problem of why there was that much debt to begin with. And then I actually like that it's spread up across different credit cards, because then what I end up doing with my clients is we have to build some kind of track record first. We have to at least start paying off something and show that we can do consistency around it, and then we might do debt consolidation. But what I found is a lot of people who do the debt consolidation, it feels like they have a blank slate, and then they just start over again. And so there's a stat, people who file for bankruptcy, they're like higher rate of filing for bankruptcy again because they didn't fix the root issue. And here's the thing, it might not be a behavioral issue. Again, it might be an income issue. It might be you didn't understand like the nuances of these credit cards, because right now I have so many clients, and I need all of you to hear me. Anyone here who has credit card debt and anyone who's listening, so many of my clients, it's not because they were irresponsible or that they were spending too much. It's because one bad thing happened that they didn't expect, and they used the credit card as an emergency fund, and now they can't get out of it. And now it's at 23, 30%, and the interest rate is just crushing them. So if that's, you didn't do anything wrong. But usually if people can't get out of the credit card and they have multiple credit cards, we try to actually knock out credit card by credit card, because it's fun to see each of them going down to 0, and they get more motivated versus that big number that they got to pay down.
So would you recommend, and I know for me, when we first worked together, I couldn't do, people try to make it a math issue. I ain't smart with math. So I just had to be like, which one of these credit cards keeps me up at night?
That's right.
And I just started with that one. This one really gives me anxiety, and I just attacked that one, even though I might have had some that were
That's
like
right.
smaller amounts. But I was like, this one, this chick right here, she got to go.
Yes, yes. So a lot of people, they're like, oh, should I do the highest balance, or should I do the lowest balance or the highest interest rate? And for all of my clients, I actually look at it differently to see. That's the first question I asked them. I'm glad that she mentioned that. She still remembers it. Which one is keeping you up at night right now? Because that's the one that you're probably going to get the most bang for your buck to get momentum.
Yeah.
And it might be the lowest balance. It might be the highest interest rate. It might just be, like I had a client who we actually didn't even do the business. We didn't even do the credit cards. She owed her cousin $5,000, and she was like, and it's interest free. She's like, I cannot go to Thanksgiving with this.
Yeah.
So we did that one first before we did the credit cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know how we be. We be like, oh, she can afford to bring the cheesecake.
I know. Oh, I saw you got a new Louis Vuitton purse.
Right.
Great question.
Any more questions in the room?
Those are great questions.
They are really good. Listen, I got the text. I was like, listen, I need to know how to prepare for this.
Yes.
This thing. All right, so last call. Any more questions? All right, so I have a final question for you.
Yeah.
What is, because this is called the Rich Girl Reset, but what is one thing that makes you feel rich that either is free or costs very little money?
Oh. Okay, it's not like a little money. This is the first thing that came to my mind.
Now wait, let me clarify that, because you debt free over here, you ain't got no bills. So stuff that like us regular folk trying to crush would consider a little bit of money. Because Bernadette be like, I went to see the same group like 16 times all over the world. So something that the rest of us would feel like is a little bit of money.
Okay, all right. Okay, you tell me if you argue if this is doable, right? Is my Carowinds annual pass is $99.
Okay, I feel like that's regular people.
That's regular people money, right?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So that makes me feel super rich, because as a kid growing up in New York City, the closest theme park was like 2 hours away in New Jersey. And my parents would never, ever take me there. And I love roller coasters. And so the annual pass for Carowinds, the fact that I can just roll up to Carowinds on a Tuesday night and go on the roller coaster by myself because my husband won't go with me, makes me feel rich.
Should. Most of us ain't rolling up at Carowinds on Tuesday.
But it stems back to most of us, the things that make us feel rich are the things that we were deprived of as kids.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was like the fact that even if I ever did get to go to the amusement park, it was like a whole day. It was a whole, we got to wake up at 5:30 and we got to make sure we go in every single ride. So we got to make it sure that we get our money's worth. How many of us were like, you got to do everything because we're only going to be here this one day. You're going to get your money's worth. And then you just end up being exhausted.
Yeah.
I say that because I make real good, it's coming out to, so one of my things is like the dollar rule in the book, which is make everything like $1 per use kind of thing. So my goal was, it's very ambitious to go to Carowinds like 100 times. I didn't do that. But it's come out to about like $10 per trip now. If you think, I went 10 times this year and it was, that felt like a good deal. Yeah. And then calling out my husband is he splurged on the $15, how much was it? It's like $15, all you can drink soda all the time.
Listen. Now, the one time me and my sister went to Carowinds when my niece was little, we did that, and we drank so much soda. We only bought one between the two of us. It was like, yo, you want some Sprite? Nah, I think I want some Coke this time.
And it refills every, 15 minutes? So every 15 minutes,
I think that is a great deal at Carowinds. I love it.
Yes, but this is what I'm saying. I love the fact that we are millionaires and we're like, we got to get our soda, bro, every 15 minutes. Like, that will never change about us.
But I think that's what, if you're reading this book and you read other things and you follow millionaires, something that just hit me was like, it is like they do live very simple. I think we've all been conditioned to think that people with money have all this stuff and all this luxury and everybody's on a private jet. And that's not really the case.
I'm in a 2-bedroom apartment in Noda, and I go to Carowinds to get free soda.
Yeah, I love it. And so the reason why I wanted to ask you that question, and I want to challenge everybody here in the room, is because we all think rich means this thing that we are aspiring to, but there's something, I'm very big on do it now, be her now. And so when you think about what is it that makes you feel rich right now, it's something that all of us can do, right? The $15 soda. For me, it's, listen, there is nothing like after you work out and you take a hot shower, like I am blessed to have this hot water after a very good workout. Like that's my one thing that makes me feel rich. Don't judge me, it is what it is. And so whatever your thing is, I want you to write that down and commit to doing that this month. Whatever that rich thing is, and don't forget that there's something you can do right now as you're on your journey, because it's where you're trying to get in, right? It's where you are now. You might be in debt now, and I came to this event so that I can learn to do something different, right?
I am going to call you out on this for a second. Because
You can't call me out on my own podcast.
Oh, yes, I can, because you brought me here. How long have we known each other now?
A long time.
A long time? At least 6 or 7 years at this point, right? And I'm saying this in that I am so amazed that you are able to bring this group of women together today, right? And I really do feel like your calling is this. Like, I think the Rich Girl Reset for you is to be bringing the right people together in the right room. I've been in a lot of big rooms this year, and these conversations are not being had. And how many times have we had the conversation where I'm just like, oh, how are things going? And you're like, it's going. But I'm like, do you understand that you're way more talented than I? I keep telling her this. I'm not just saying this. She's an amazing communicator. We know this, right? She is able to bring people together and educate, but also be very empathetic, which is not, actually, that's not one of my core skill sets. If you notice, I'll just be like, no, we're not doing that. She's like way more patient. And so I was so excited when she started her coaching practice. And I was so excited to hear that she was doing this podcast. Because in my mind, I was like, it just made total sense. But it took a minute for you to like come into that. So I just encourage everyone who's listening is that when you see someone who, like you, is doing this type of work, you think that they know that they're great and they're good and whatever because they have the stuff. I promise you, they don't. So let's reset all the rich girls.
Yeah.
And so aside from yourself, like who is out there that's inspired you, that has brought you into a room like this? Every now and then it costs us nothing to say, you know what? I thought of you today, or I remember this thing that you said on the podcast. You don't know how much that means to you.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I love that. Yeah, encourage all the rich girls. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so Bernadette, tell all the people listening where they can learn more. Because what classes you got coming up? You always teaching a class.
Yes.
And they don't all cost $5,000, y'all.
Yes, some of them do. I'm teaching, if you go to skillpop.com, I'm partnering there to teach Crush Your Money Goals, smart habits for busy professionals. So specifically, you don't got a lot of time to learn new stuff. That's the class you go to. And then investing for beginners. And then if you go to crushyourmoneygoals.com, you can check out my book tour where I'm going to different cities. So if you're not in Charlotte, like for example, next week I'll be in Huntington Beach, I'll be in Orlando, I'll be in Las Vegas. If you are also interested in having me come to your city, let me know. I'll wrap that around. And you can go to crushyourmoneygoals.com where you can learn more about the book, about the classes. And then if you just need free content right now, because that's what you can manage, that's okay too. We have the podcast. We have free resources as well, and I have a free guide. If you go to crushyourmoneygoals.com/free guide, I listed out the 30 resources that you can just kick off the new year with.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is so fun.
This is so fun. And thank you guys so much for being here.